Okay, so yeah, I originally did not think I wanted to be a writer. Originally, I thought, my parents were hippies, and they were very not traditional, and so I thought I wanted to have a real job in a real office, in a cubicle, and I wanted to live in a nice subdivision where a house looked like everybody else's house, and I did not want to live in a teepee, and I didn't want to. I wanted to live a traditional life, a traditional American life, and I tried it. I studied Chinese language when I was in college. I worked in business in China. I tried very hard to be a serious business person and make money and do those things, and I hated it. I was very unhappy. I switched from that to programming. In the early days of the internet, I was an internet developer, a web developer. I worked for a consulting company in Boston for a while, and again, there was some moment where I really liked the technology. I thought it was amazing what the internet was doing and how it was changing everything, but I hated the work of working for big companies trying to market products on the internet. There was nothing interesting in that, and so I started writing as an escape from that day job life, and it started as a hobby. It was something I did on the weekends, and then I wrote more and more, and there was a moment when I realized that writing was the only thing I actually enjoyed in my life, and that was the moment when I thought, oh, I'm going to become a novelist. I want to become a novelist. I was in my 20s, and the feeling got so strong that eventually I announced this intention to become a novelist to all of my coworkers and quit my job and said, I'm going to write a novel. And off I went, and I spent all my savings, and I did write a novel, and it was immediately rejected by every single publisher, and it was a total failure, and I had to go back and get another job because I was out of money. And I got another job doing internet development, and those computer jobs were really good because they allowed you to build up a little bit of savings, so then you could quit again and write another novel. And I did that 4 times, actually. I would write a novel, run out of money, fail to sell the novel, go get another job, save up money, then spend it all writing another novel, and I went back and forth like that. I did that 4 times, failed every time. And eventually just accepted that I was never going to be a novelist. After writing 4 novels that had all failed, I just knew it wasn't for me. I wasn't going to succeed. But I loved writing still, and so I started writing short stories. And I knew it was going to be a hobby then. I got a real job, and I would write on the weekends again, and I would write these short stories. And almost immediately, the short stories started to sell. I think I learned enough over the course of all of those bad novels, and they were bad. Every novel that I wrote was terrible, actually, looking back. They were all very broken. But I learned things from that process, and so when I was working on the short stories, suddenly something worked, and they started to sell, and then they started to get a lot of critical recognition, and started to be nominated for awards, and it was a strange moment because I'd given up on the idea of being a writer, and then suddenly I was actually succeeding as a writer, and slowly, over the course of a couple of years of writing short stories, my ego got back in the game, and I sort of thought, okay, maybe this time I can write a novel, and so then I sat down and I wrote my 5th book. And once again, I did the same exact thing that I did every time, which was I quit my job and used all my savings to write the novel. And this one, though, it turned out to be, even every single major New York publisher still rejected that book, that 5th book. Everybody rejected it again, which I thought was it was like, oh, of course they do. Like, I can write short stories, but I'm not meant to be a novelist. But there was a small publisher in San Francisco, Nightshade Books, and they bought Wind Up Girl, and then it turned into a phenomenon. none of us expected what happened with it. Even Nightshade, who bought the book, they thought they were going to lose money. And so they were like, we like this book. We don't think we'll sell any copies at all, but we really like it. And this was a publisher that was literally two crazy guys in a house in San Francisco. They weren't, you know, they were a very small press. And then suddenly the book blew up. So, and then I was a writer after that. Like, it all changed. Everything changed.
Heureusement que l'édition n'est pas une source exacte. Alors, j'ai envie de vous demander, ils sont vraiment super mauvais, les 4 romans d'avant? Vous les sortirez jamais? Vous les reverrez jamais?
No, those books really are, yeah, terrible. I think there are things that I could fix them now. I think I know enough that at least a couple of them I could fix. But at this point, I have other ideas I want to work on, and so, you know, it's not as interesting to me to fix those old books, because those are sort of like it's a little bit like going back to your childhood or something like that. It's not the part of your life that's alive and interesting now. And so I've got other new books that I want to work on, and they're pressing, and they're the ones that are demanding my attention. So yeah, I probably, you know, I never say never, but I think right now at least there's other things that I feel like I'm desperate to write. And those other ones, they can sit. So.
C'était juste par curiosité de lectrice. Vous avez déclaré que la science-fiction était le seul genre qui vous avait donné les outils nécessaires suffisamment puissants pour décrire l'évolution du monde, voir le monde tel qu'il est. Est-ce que c'est la fonction première de la science-fiction, selon vous, dire le monde? Votre fiction est-elle aussi politique que scientifique?
Well, I think that, so for me, one of the things, and this probably comes from growing up with hippies, is that it feels very self-indulgent to write stories, just to write stories. And the truth is that the reason why I read is because I love stories, I love adventures, I love to be sucked into a story. But at the same time, it feels like you want to be maybe of use to the world somehow. And so you sort of feel like if you're going to cut down a lot of trees, that you ought to have something to say, or something to illuminate, some idea to explain, at least some idea to explain, or at least investigate somehow. And so for me, at least, what I find is that with a story, I want there to be a question there. For a book, especially, I want there to be a question that I can investigate, and that if there is one, then then there's enough room for me to sort of go into that book and sort of explore it. And it does feel like it's with purpose. It's for joy, for certain, but it's also with some purpose. I think it's a strange mix of, like, you know, I certainly have my own, you know, personal political views, my own values. Those definitely inform my writing. I don't quite feel like the story, I hope that the stories themselves don't feel political, I guess. I hope that the stories feel genuinely like stories. I hope that, though, I think the thing about science fiction is that it gives us this interesting set of tools where, I guess the way that I think about this is I think about science fiction as being able to give us context about the world. The way that I think science fiction works is that we can look around at a trend or a moment now, and it's not very meaningful because the important things haven't happened yet, or they happen very slowly. So if I'm writing The Water Knife and I'm thinking about climate change, and this is an abstract problem, and the details of the problem are also fairly abstract and small. You say, oh, there's a drought happening right now. Oh well. Oh, you know, perhaps our rivers are running a little low. Oh well. What does that mean, though? What happens if this goes on? What will the world look like if the climate data that we can turn to climate scientists and ask them about, if their climate data is real, then what world will we inherit in the future? And so what I think of science fiction as being able to do is it stretches us out into this future where we get to live in the skin of our future selves. Science fiction, all fiction is an empathy engine. And fiction helps us connect to things that are different from us, for people who are different than us. And so I think science fiction allows us to cross over into living inside of our future selves. Like we can connect to that future self who otherwise is fairly uninteresting to us. We're very good as human beings at identifying with our present moment, our present needs and wants. We have a very hard time waiting or emphasizing our future selves or our children's lives. Those are abstractions for us largely. What science fiction can do, though, is it can let us live inside of that future version of our decisions. And so if I can give a reader the experience of living as a climate refugee, someone who has been displaced from their home and has had to cross many states where people hate them and has been stopped by border controls and can't get to someplace safer or better because of it. If I can give the reader that experience of living inside of that climate refugee's skin, then, if I connect that to the physical details of our present moment, and, you know, in the Water Knife, I'm writing about the southwestern United States and the Colorado River. I can make a reader, after they finish the book ideally, they'll come back into their present moment and they'll be looking around and they'll read a story about drought, or they'll read a story about how the Colorado River is running low, or how Lake Mead has just hit record lows. And these are things that they would never care about before. They wouldn't even notice. And yet now I have a reader and they'll say, oh, I just saw this article about Lake Mead. And suddenly, that because they've lived in that future moment, their present moment has context. And I think that's what science fiction does. And I think that's what I'm interested in doing, is creating a context to have a better discussion about our present moment. I don't want to preach to people. I don't want to say, oh, politically, you should have these values. I want people to experience something in the future and then have a different way of looking at the present. Sorry.